Welcome back to the Microshift Project Podcast, where we shine a light on the small, powerful shifts that can change the course of our lives. I'm your host, as always, Nick Valinchek. That's Nicky V if you're nasty. And I'm excited today because I am joined by someone I met in Boston at MIT. I'm saying that because it allows both of us to sound very smart. If you're at MIT, you have to be smart. Irina Shehovsov. She is the founder of Reclaim Your Life, a transformational coach, and the number one, can you believe it? Not number two, not number three, number one international best-selling author of The Gift Inside. Now I can check off my bucket list interviewing a number one best-selling author. She hosts two podcasts, Single Parent Success Stories and Reclaim Your Life with Irina, and runs the Happiness Academy YouTube channel. Her mission is simple but powerful: to empower women to heal, believe in themselves, and create a joyful, purpose-driven life. Irina, I'm so glad you're here with me today.
Thank you, Nicholas. It's a pleasure to be here.
And as I said, we met at MIT in Boston. So first of all, somehow it was, time is such a funny thing. It was 2 months ago. It feels like it was a year ago, but somehow we sit here and say time goes by so fast. Well, how could it be both? Like, we're here to talk about the deep, lingering questions. How can time be so slow yet so quick at the same time? But it was a fun event. We had a fire drill, which I did not expect happening, but it was a great opportunity to really see other people who were so passionate about what they were doing. I'm a confident person. I've had to adapt that. And so my mindset when I went in was like, I'm going to be the best person here. I think that can sound conceited, but I think sometimes you have to empower yourself with that confidence, or else you're going to go out on stage and look awful. But as soon as the first person shared their message, I was like, oh, wow, this is awesome. And then everybody shared their story, and we had so many different perspectives. It was just a really awesome event. I think I really attached myself to your message as I shared with you in Boston, because as my mother passed when I was younger, I had to have a whole community of women, from cousins to aunts to grandmothers, who stepped up to fill a massive void in myself and my brother and sister's lives. And so I've always been very plugged in to wanting to see women get fulfillment out of their lives. And it's not always like you would think that like we live in an era of equality, but it's still something that still feels like it gets pushed down a little bit. So first and foremost, I want to thank you for what you're doing and the cause you're after. And I want to talk about how you've been able to build this incredible platform around healing and empowerment. For listeners who are experiencing your story and your brand for the first time, how do you introduce yourself and the work that you do?
Well, my whole idea is to empower women. So no matter where they are, no matter how stuck they feel, there is always a way out, as we have this amazing ability to choose. Of course, choice comes sometimes not very easy and not very obvious, but we do have that power to choose. And I believe in holistic approach, so looking at 4 different aspects of our life: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, because we are holistic beings. Like right now, we are just talking with you, but there are so many things happening internally that we just take for granted, like breathing or seeing or being able to understand each other. So this is how I would introduce myself.
Yeah, and I think that's awesome and something to kind of really be thinking about constantly. And I know that, you mentioned that women have choices. Those choices aren't always so easy for them to make. I think especially women, I really honestly feel this. Women more than men get stuck in situations where they have little higher degree of kind of like Stockholm syndrome. Are you familiar with that term?
Stockholm?
So, it's the idea that like you almost start to become sympathetic towards the person that's hurting you, for lack of better terms. And I feel like women, maybe it's the instinct that they can change the person that they're with or whatever it might be. But for women who are in that situation, what advice would you impart to them to give them the strength to make that decision to move into a better place in their life?
Well, sometimes it takes awareness, first of all, to see where you are and to understand what is happening. Oftentimes we choose the familiar pain, no matter, because it's familiar, and even though it's hurting us, but we know how much it would hurt versus stepping out into the uncharted territory and what if something worse were to happen? And oftentimes that could keep us stuck when we get comfortable with our not so helpful bad thing that we cannot let go of. So first is awareness where you are and having the desire and willingness to change. Sometimes people like to talk about change, but they don't take action towards their change. They just talk and talk and talk, and it doesn't get any results. So being able and willing to make the difficult decision, whether it is leaving a person or stepping in a different direction.
Change is tough. I mean, it's hard for us. Humans are weird. I guess we're much like the concept of time, where we adapt to things, but at the same time, it's almost like we adapt to the things that we aren't told we need to adapt to. When we realize there's a problem, it's like hard for us. I don't know if it's like a sense of pride or what it comes down to. I can tell you, Irina, this is how bad I have it. We made plans for today after work, and my wife was like, oh, there's a balloon festival, and my mind exploded, and I was like, I already knew what we were doing today. Why are you throwing this variable into this situation? We can't do this. No, we have to stick to the plan. It just highlights how hard it is, for me personally, and how I know that even though I've been able to make changes and you've been able to make changes, and we'll talk about some of those things coming up here, how hard it is fundamentally. Another thing you said is one of the defining challenges in your life was realizing no one is coming to rescue me. I've always said that you have to stand up for yourself because nobody is waiting in line to do it for you. You continue to say it's up to me to get myself out of my misery. That's really a powerful moment of ownership. Can you take us a little bit backward into that season of your life and what it looked like as you were going through that situation that spurred that kind of thought?
Sure. So I became a single parent to a newborn and a 5-year-old out of the blue. And I was living in that miserable state of being for about a year, waiting for somebody to come rescue me, but of course nobody did. So I decided to rescue myself. One fateful morning, I was standing on a train platform after dropping 2 kids off to school, to different places, and missing my train by mere seconds. And it was this constant daily rush of morning commute. And I started asking myself, started crying, do we just come here to suffer? What's the point of this life anyway? This constant struggle where every day I felt I was getting closer to my death, where I didn't feel like I was living. So I was in this pursuit for nobody knows what reason.
Mm.
And I decided at that moment that there got to be more to this thing called life. And I decided that I wanted to be happy again. I didn't know how, what, or when, but that was the kind of the turning point that started me on my journey. Because I think what happens with the change, you gotta be miserable with something so much that the pain of staying stuck is so much more than persevering and going to the other side. You got to be so fed up with what you have, how much it's not working for you to kind of push through. Because if you are still kind of hovering over it, then you're going to be living with it. But you got to be fed up with something, I think.
It's amazing how life can work how it does, because you're able to sit there and talk about a moment where you are probably pretty close to your bottom, if not at your bottom, where you're thinking to yourself, like, what is this really all about? And I think that is probably one of the things that we all have in common. At some point in our life, we stop and say, like, what are we doing on this orb that we are on for the limited amount of time we're on it? And I think some people make the biggest mistake I think you can make in life is they don't take the question seriously. Because I think for most people, when they're faced with as a conversation with themselves like that, it really allows them to question purpose. What am I here for? I know that I run a business, and there's a lot of people out there who run businesses. I'm going to say something controversial here. No one is here just to work for you. No one is here. Our time should not be, we should not be describing ourselves and what we do based off of what our job is. We all have a sense of greater purpose, and it's awesome to be able to hear you transition from a point where you're saying, I'm thinking to myself, what are we doing here? To being able to laugh, right? Like, you went in a 10-second span, but that shows you, once you find your purpose, how it can completely reframe your entire way of thinking. And this whole podcast is effectively around microshifts, right? That is what my little catchphrase is. And you described exactly what I feel like those things are. It's a moment that, when you look at your overall life, it doesn't stand out as being a monumentally huge thing. You didn't win a Nobel Peace Prize. It is a small little conversation that you had with yourself that made you completely reframe what you were talking about, how you were thinking, and what you were going to continue to do in your life. You also talked about, in our little questionnaire that we ask, creating morning routines, practicing daily gratitude, forgiveness, short bursts of movement, learning other languages, and singing. Those can all be powerful kind of like daily micro shifts within themselves, right? Because it can allow you to take, when you're having a bad day and you just even think something simple like, someone else has it worse than me. That whole momentum that you're doing in that day can shift. For you, of kind of those things I mentioned, what do you feel like has been the most transformational for you personally?
I think gratitude. It kind of shines the light on things that are working versus the things that are not working. And it could be breadcrumbs that we place on our way out of darkness when we start focusing on things in our life that are already working, instead of thinking how broken life is, how miserable I am in a situation, by looking at positive aspects. And it's not about putting rose-colored glasses on, but it's about shifting your mindset to focus on what's working, because suddenly you will realize how many more things are working. That was one. Gratitude. Forgiveness is another one. Not carrying the baggage of yesterday into today, because every day is a gift. It's an opportunity for us to start fresh. It's an opportunity for us, even like if you had an argument with somebody yesterday, let it go, because in the grand scheme of things, does it even matter? Is it worth your angriness? Is it worth your stress to be carrying it and spreading it on other people who come into your life on a day-to-day basis? So forgiveness was another one. And the third one, I would say singing, because it allows you to release any anger or any frustration. And if anytime you feel upset or miserable, whenever I sing, I feel better immediately. So
what do you sing? I'm curious.
Anything except heavy metal and rap.
Okay. So I'll just tell you right now, my favorite kind of music is heavy metal and rap. But I ask because it's funny. I am a terrible singer. I do not have a voice for that at all. However, I am witty, and I can just start making stuff up based off of a song like Jingle Bells. My son and I were driving the other day, and I was just driving down the road. Whatever we saw, I just talked about it while singing the tune of Jingle Bells, and he just cracked up. I mean, he thought it was the funniest thing in the world, and he's talked about it like 2 or 3 times since then. And I just, to your point, when you start thinking about it, living in your anger is not just a self-fulfilling situation. No, you take that and you're passing it along to other people, whether you realize it or not. And and I know that I do this, right? Like, I'm a human being. I'm by no means have I fixed all my shit, by no stretch of the imagination. But I thought about that situation with my son where I was able to see his attitude change, not like he was having a bad day, but from nothing to just joy and excitement. And when he came back, he was so nice to his mom, and they had a good conversation. And it's being able to look at that and be like, not to be able to say like, wow, I did that, but just thinking about, wow, the action the action I decided to take, I could have gone one way or I could have gone another way. I could have went positive or I could have went negative. And I went positive, and it bred positivity. So you're absolutely right. That, and singing, come on, it's contagious. You know, it catches on. People want to do it. So I think those are awesome habits, awesome ways to kind of reframe your mind. Another way you reframed your mind, you talked a little bit about your breakup, and that after it happened, you really questioned, can I rebuild my life? And man, I think that's so powerful, to have that thought, right? Because it's, at the time, it seems so monumentous when we're in these relationships and you put so much into it. It's basically like having to admit that we have to start over, and nobody wants to have to do that. But you chose not to give up. And another one of the things that I like to talk about is perseverance. So can you talk about what perseverance looked like for you during those darkest days?
Well, in the beginning, it was that I was this food provider for my little one in the form of breast milk, you know. And that the thought that kept me going. I had 2 kids, and I needed to be somebody for them. So that kind of kept me going, but I was not really present. I was like mechanically operating and fulfilling the tasks and duties, ticking boxes off, but I didn't really feel like I was present. To have a little example, I vividly remember when my daughter took first steps and when she uttered her first words. And I don't remember when my son did those milestones, because yes, I was physically present, but mentally checked out. I was not paying attention in that way. So it was like exterior frame, strong exterior with crushed down interior, going through days and emotions. And I don't know if it's a midlife crisis or what it is, but I had that identity of someone else's mom and someone else's spouse, but who I was, I no longer knew. What makes me me, because when you live with somebody for a long time, you start finishing each other's sentences and you do everything together. And now you gotta figure out how you're gonna do life on your own. What are your habits? What are you gonna do? How are you gonna... Simple things like how to get a mortgage application, get a car. Those transactional things that you never had to do yourself, or how to balance your account. And look at those different dimensions. Not to mention how to process your emotions and how to create new kind of routines to establish yourself who you are, what makes you you. You're not your title, you're not your job, like you mentioned. You're so much more. You have lived experience. You have... Your worldview is much bigger. So yeah.
I think one thing that our listeners can definitely resonate with, and so many people out there can, is that hollow shell you described, where you're looking at me and you can tell that I'm here, but if you really look at me in my eyes, nothing's going on. I'm completely numb to everything going on around me. And it's really such a terrible way to have to go through life. And so I applaud you for being able to get out of the circumstance you were in, not just the relationship necessarily, but and more importantly, mentally, because it can be very hard when you get stuck in that rut. I mean, I know that I've watched people personally that I care about. My dad just stuck in a mental rut for decades of his life where he woke up, he went to work, he came home, he worked out, he took a shower, he fell asleep in the recliner. Rinse, recycle, repeat, right? Every single day. And it's like, he had moments of enjoyment, but it didn't ever feel like he was fully enjoying what he was doing on this earth. And it always stuck with me. And you know, you have a single parent podcast. I was lucky enough to be on it, and I think we talked about this a little bit, that oftentimes with our children, I picked up on how my dad was. And I can say that I knew pretty early on that I wanted to be a very high percentage different type of father than my dad was. My dad taught me a lot of great things like responsibility, hard work ethic, you know, showing up when you didn't want to, because he had no choice. There was no one else. So it was either he showed up or that was it. But it taught me things that I didn't want to pass off to my son. And actually, the episode that I just released, by the time this gets released, it's 2 weeks ago, was really talking about how I want to make sure I'm not putting my bad habits onto my kids, right? And so it's great kind of wrapping that thought process up, how you've been able to change that, because as they've been able to see you through the years, I'm sure they now see a much more present, fulfilled mother, and not just she was there. And maybe it could have been a situation where your son was too young to really remember. And if that is the case, we rejoice in things like that he didn't have to experience that side of it. But it also shows that we can always and should always be taking inventory of where we're at and figuring out ways we can try to better ourselves. So I really applaud you and appreciate you telling us that's really showing us your scars. And I think that's important. We can all empathize with that. Now, you deal with a lot of different things in the lines of work you do. You have a couple of different podcasts, you've written books. I know that one thing that you've talked about is a big misconception around toxic relationships, and that is oftentimes when people pull themselves out of it, people think that they are broken, right? But as you put it so well, you're not broken, you're simply buried. And healing is about uncovering the worth that's always been within you. And I'm going to take a second for everybody to really think through how deep that is, because that is such a deep and profound statement. That's such a massive shift in perspective. How did you personally come to that resolution, and how do you really try to show others how they can find their worth?
Oh, in the beginning, when you're in the depths of everything, you do feel that you are broken, that relationship didn't work out, and somehow it's your fault. But it's really is not, because relationships is two people coming together, and nobody is perfect. I make mistakes. My ex-spouse could have made mistakes. It's not about that, but it's about remembering who we are. And sometimes we define ourselves as the relationship or as that person. But we constantly change, we constantly shift. And what used to be broken or not good before could be totally different now. And uncovering your worth starts by remembering who you really are, what makes you who you are. I'm a great believer in hobbies. I believe through hobbies we discover new dimensions of ourselves. And through practices that I talk about in my book, The Gift Inside, creating different habits in all areas of our life that allow us to thrive. And little by little we can uncover our own worth and stop determining that our worth is tied into a relationship. Meanwhile, our worth comes from the fact that we are here, we are alive, we are having this life experience, and it is up to us to choose who we want to be and what kind of life we can create, because we have this amazing ability to choose, but we often forget that we have a choice.
Yeah, wow, that's definitely really good, poignant advice. And habits really are so important to our ability to grow on a daily basis. I think a really good way to look at it is garbage in, garbage out, right? Meaning if you have a bunch of bad habits and that's all that you have, all that's going to come out of what you do is going to be garbage. So you have to try to create these habits, things that you've talked about, like gratitude, singing, little things. I tell people, just get up, walk outside, get some fresh air. Anything that you can do that allows you to feel like you checked a box off in the positivity comment. That stuff will snowball as the day goes on. And from a bigger perspective, a story that you shared about hitting rock bottom after your relationship ended and how you felt unworthy but decided, hey, I have to rebuild regardless of how I feel in the moment. Like linking those habits to your rebuilding process, I'd love to hear, like, what did that really actually look like for you on a day-to-day basis? What were some of the things that you did on a day-to-day basis to kind of help you rebuild?
Sure. So the first habit was simple walk. Simply walking outside for 30 minutes. And there was always the door and the threshold, and I finally crossed the threshold and took my first step, and that was my journey back to self. And in the morning I used to wake up a little earlier before my kids so that I have the time for myself, fulfill my batteries, and I use the first hour of the day, like Tony Robbins says, the power hour. I wrote what I wanted my life to look like. And so I would go and I would recite it and I would envision what it would unfold and what it would look like. I didn't have it at the time, but what I wanted to create. And one of the things was becoming an author. And through the podcast, I became an author and I wrote 7 books in the last 3 years. So it's been incredible. And I totally even forgot about it. So it took about 8 years to come to life. And then I also wanted to speak on stages. And I was able to do that this year at MIT.
I saw it. It happened. It's true.
And another dream of mine is to sing on stages in front of thousands of people. And I'm working towards that dream now. I'm a great believer in dreams. And no matter how old you are, you still have a little 5-year-old ready to come out and play. But you gotta let them come out and play. The dream is not gonna chase you. You gotta go and chase that dream. And then little by little, so first habit was creating a morning routine. We all know how to make a perfect cup of coffee or a perfect cup of tea, whatever you like to drink. We also know what are the key ingredients that make us feel alive in the morning, because that affects how you start your day, affects the rest of your day, how it unfolds. So filling your cup first. So as soon as I woke up, as soon as my feet hit the floor, I'm saying I'm gonna have an awesome day before anything. And what are 3 things I'm grateful for? And it could be simple things like the fact that you're awake, that you're breathing, and you have a roof over your head. It doesn't have to be complicated or anything crazy. And during my walks, I would say thank you, my knees, for walking, because I dislocated my knee back in 21, and it hasn't been a day that gone by that I haven't thanked my knees. It's something trivial, something we take for granted, but we only appreciate something once it's lost. So why wait until it's lost? Appreciate now. And then doing practices like forgiveness and gratitude. I used to do 6 sense meditation, and that kind of incorporated different things like gratitude and forgiveness. In the course of a meditation, you get to practice all those disciplines. And then what happened next, I joined Toastmasters, which allowed me to be comfortable with being uncomfortable and opened up my voice. And then I started getting voice lessons. So that was the greatest relief for me from recovering after my breakup, because I was able to sing what I couldn't speak, and sessions with therapists really made me feel worse. So singing really was amazing. And what happened then in 2019, I attended a live event in Phoenix, Arizona, and I got inspired by Evan Carmichael, who said there is not enough belief in this world today, and you should help somebody who is a step behind you. And this is when I decided to help women like myself who felt lost, to tell them that, the life is not over, and actually you can create your second act or third act, whatever it is in your journey, and you can create the best possible life for yourself. And then in 2020, Single Parent Success Stories was born. And then I created a course called Happiness Academy, which I actually describing that what the Gift Inside book is based on. Again, habits to allow you to thrive. And I basically took people through my journey of movement, of morning routine, of eating right, of being present, of practicing meditation, forgiveness, and hobbies, and different tools. And having that, how to be free from victimhood, that's the story I shared during MIT. It's another chapter in the book. So putting all those little habits, and one of the books that I was influenced by is called The Slight Edge by Steve Olson, and where he talks about little microshifts, the daily changes that you make, 1 degree changes every day. So a year later, you're going to be 365 degrees better than where you are today. So that had a big impact on me as well.
Well, it's awesome to hear how you've been able to progress towards your dreams. And I think a lot of times it is figuring out what they are.
Yes.
And listen, I've never said this before, okay? But I have a dream. All right? Listen to this. I want to be on an episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. So D, Charlie, Dennis, Mac, if you are hearing this, I'm your guy. We could come up with a great character. I'll do whatever it takes. But yeah, it is little things like that. I say it in jest because I think it'll make a cool clip for social media. But there's some element of truth to that, right? Like, I'd love to be able to do something with the things that I'm passionate about. Right? That's what took you to the point where you're at. That's what got me out of my seat to say, hey, I've wanted to do this so long. It's time to stop moving the goalposts and constantly changing what has to happen before I can do this. Right? I wrote a book recently. It's a short book. It's just like 33 pages long. It's meant to be a pocket book. It's not meant to be my life's defining work. I feel like that'll come later, but I'm going to tell you right now, I have wanted to write a children's Christmas book, okay? And for 3 years, I keep a daily calendar open in Google Calendar open in my Chrome tab, and we're talking 1,000+ days now, and I have probably worked on it for 13 days. Honestly, it's just something that I constantly look at, but everything else is more important. And so finally I got this idea for this other book, and I found myself taking the same process. And I was like, yeah, this is stupid. This is really stupid. I can't do this. I need to just do it. And so in a matter of a night, I literally just sat down, wrote out an outline, wrote out the book, sent it to my designer. It's not a picture book, it's an adult book, and you don't want to see the kind of pictures I would draw for an adult book. It would not be appropriate. So it was easy, just get a little PDF back. I'm submitting it to Amazon and things like that. And now I feel opened up, and I'm like, oh my God, I can get this children's book done. Because I did it, and I did it in such a short amount of time. And it goes to highlight how when you're able to take those little victories, you can move them into bigger victories. When things get heavy for you, you talked about you like going to take walks. That's awesome. So you like nature, gratitude, meditation, singing. Can you share a moment when one of those practices really anchored when you went through a storm?
Sure. And anytime, something bad happens or unfavorable, the easiest shift to do is go to take a walk. It's the fastest mood changer there is, because you change your environment, you change where you were, you move your body, and you get to observe nature. You get to see, hear the birds singing, or see the green of the trees. Or if you're near a beach, you can hear the waves. And all of that is designed to calm you down and to shift your perspective. And suddenly your problem or whatever issue was, you either can come up with a solution or it's not going to be such a red hot point that causes you to break. So
yeah, that's awesome. You also have some guiding principles and ideas that I really love. You mentioned the Slight Edge by Jeff Olson, and there's a quote about generating happiness like an electric plant. And the principle, if it is to be, it's up to me. That is a stop where you stand, impactful quote. And I'm going to say it again. If it's to be, it's up to me. When I hear that, I think the first thing I think is I got to stop getting angry when it involves other people. Because when you get angry, if you get angry at another person, you're allowing them to control what you're doing, because the situation that they brought to you now became the situation you're reacting to. And I know that that's something I personally deal with, and I think that's what is great about quotes like this is you can hear it and they immediately it's like someone standing behind you whispering in your ear, "Hey idiot, this is you, this is what you're doing." How do those things that you experienced in that book shape the way you live today?
You mean the microshifts?
No, the stuff with Jeff Olson, the electric plant, which I think is also like generating happiness, and then if it's to be, it's up to me. How does that really shape the way you live today?
Oh, well, I'm all about, those little micro things. So every day I do 15 minutes of Duolingo to learn. I'm learning French. It keeps your mind very open and engaged. What else? There is another app on the phone. It's called Elevate, and it teaches you how to improve reading, writing, math, cognition, to improve your cognition, your speech, your articulation. So I do that also 5 minutes. Then I do 10 minutes of singing. That's my morning, and it's kind of set gratitude. So how it all shaped, it's all the different tools that once you start doing them, not just talking about them, but actually implementing into your life, you would feel different. And I am not perfect. Sometimes I do fall off a bandwagon, and I notice when I don't do those things, how unfulfilled I feel. Like something is really missing. Like if I don't go for my walk, if I don't do those little things. And then throughout the day doing micro movements, so doing a little push-up or a pull-up, or just walking around the block, nothing crazy. Because it's not the monumental things that you do once in a while. Your life is about the daily choices that you make every single day. And the quotes you shared, they're not really my own quotes. So the generate happiness from within, I think it's Brendon Burchard quote. Because we have this amazing ability, because happiness is not found anything outside of ourselves. It's not in the next job, in the next opportunity, next relationship. It is something that we can cultivate from inside by fulfilling ourselves, by filling a cup first. So that's why I'm a great believer in passions and hobbies and rediscovering who you are. Maybe there was something you always wanted to do, but you were putting it in the back pocket saying, "Oh, I do it when I'm older. Oh, I do it when I have time." Well, guess what? Tomorrow is not guaranteed. Why are you putting your life on hold? For what great reason? And I'm not saying, go and play all the time, but you gotta, segregate time where you fulfill yourself, not because it's your job, it's your calling, it's something you must do because you get a paycheck from it, but something that fills your soul from the inside out.
Yeah, I think too much you see people thinking that that's money. And then they get money and they're still empty, right? And oftentimes even more empty, because in the acquisition of money, they've hurt everyone and everything around them. So it is really important to understand that happiness comes from within. It's not going to come from an external source. It has to be self-produced. But I also have to comment that I don't think I'm doing adulting right, because I hear everybody I talk to and they're like, "Oh, I'm doing this app that teaches me languages, and I'm doing this app." And I'm like, "Oh, well, I have this app where I get to choose what kind of weapons I try to kill these little guys with." So I don't think I'm at a high level of adulting. I think I'm pretty much near the bottom here. I'm going to try better though. I do have Babbel. Long ago I bought the lifetime subscription for Babbel. So I wanted to learn Italian. When I was growing up, I went to a Ukrainian Catholic school that taught us Ukrainian. I won a Ukrainian spelling bee. Okay.
Wow.
I can barely say anything now. I don't remember any of it, but it was fulfilling to be able to be like, yeah, I kind of have this thing that no one else is ever going to be able to say because it's so obscure. If listeners walk away with one message, you want it to be, no matter what you've been through, your past doesn't define your future. You have the power to reclaim your happiness and create a life you love. Can you unpack that a little bit before we head out today?
Sure. So we have this amazing power of choice. And your past does not really define your future if you choose to. Because if you get stuck in the past, that's all you're going to create for yourself in the future. So I'm a great believer in forgiveness and how our past does not affect our future. I can speak from personal experience. Who would have thought that I would have 2 podcasts? I would have write books, even though my English is not my first language. I am a recovering introvert. And here I am speaking on podcasts and on stages. And who is to say? Because we hold the key to write our own life. And oftentimes we give this key away to other people, to figures of authority, to doctors, therapists. And I'm not saying they are bad, but do you have your own opinion? Do you have your own life and what you want to create? Oftentimes, if we have this kind of laid out plans, how you're supposed to go to school, start a family, get a career, have a house and with a picket fence and 1.5 kids. And if everything goes according to plan and you have this picture, you might not even question yourself where your life is going because it exactly matches your expectations of life, what life is. In my case, it wasn't the case. My picture shattered and I had to create and paint a new picture. And I was looking for what normal looked like from other people, but we get to define our own normal. We get to define our own life and we hold that pen or that key that we can write with. We get to create our own life.
Irina, I want to thank you for coming on today, being very open and honest, and the way you frame resilience, not as necessarily bouncing back, but as moving forward with intention, with self-care, and a redefined strength. For everyone listening, remember that your past doesn't get the final say. The micro shifts you make today can help you change your tomorrow. Irina, before we head out, I want you to tell everyone where they can find you.
So my website is Irina Shehovsov, just like my name.com. My books are available on Amazon, and the podcast, one is Single Parent Success Stories, the other one is Reclaim Your Life with Irina on all the podcasting platforms, and YouTube channel is Happiness Academy _
Awesome. Well, you could find me on Instagram at Nick from CWE. You could find me on YouTube and watch this awesome video at The Microshift. Thanks for tuning in to the Microshift Project Podcast. Until next time, keep making the shifts that move you forward.